Do you guys want me to tell you what's on my gear wall? Well, that's what you film when it's raining outside. Check out this episode of How Not to Highline. Hi, I'm Ryan Jinks and welcome to my gear closet. And many times I have been asked to go into detail what I have on this wall behind me. Now this is only one wall in my office that I've put the most beautiful gear that I do own to have a nice backdrop for these videos. I'm going to go into detail on what's in here. We have the climbing side, which is going to have to be another video because I'm going to go into detail about what I have on my highlining side. So I used to live in a smaller duplex with a one-car garage, and that's where I used to hang all my gear on a bunch of plywood and just lag bolts. So it's easy to hang everything and is pretty cheap. It was great for what I used it for. It wasn't intended to be a studio wall. When I moved to this house, which is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, this is gonna be my office. I always intended my garage to be for more gear, so I could film out in the garage. That's what I was used to. But when I was making it all pretty to make it a studio, it was summer and I realized it was 110 degrees in that garage and that wasn't going to happen. So in my climate controlled house, I have built this studio wall, which is a little bit smaller than I'd like it to be. It kind of it's only 8 feet tall by about 10 feet wide. Fills up pretty quick. Now the way I hung this gear is on a pegboard, which is something you just buy at the hardware store. But you can't obviously just screw it to the wall, or these hooks that go in the holes. These can't go behind it. So you have to put a 1x4 or 1x3 just perimeter of wood around and then screw it to that. And they're 4x8 sheets. So I have these rectangles of trim going behind this thing, and I can't put the pegs in those areas. So it's close enough. If I really wanted something, I'd put a screw in that spot. But it's not that expensive until you start buying this many of these. So it's not the cheapest solution. It looks nice. I ended up painting this. It did come white, but I was able to fix my seam. There's a seam right here. So it's one option. If you're only buying like one sheet and maybe hanging it at eye level in your garage, it could look pretty cool. And the less white it is, maybe do the brown side or something, hides a lot of issues, either in the pegboard or the marks that your gear makes. But obviously I like this. I needed it white for light and stuff like that, and it looks pretty nice. I would probably do this setup again. So now I'm going to go into detail on what I have on this wall. Some things that I bought was during my learning curve, so if I had like a fire or something, I wouldn't replace everything I have up here. But I'll tell you why I bought it or what I like about it, and let's get started. Okay, let's talk about my beefy shackles here. I knew you're supposed to have shackles from watching, Dean Potter videos, and they look strong, and I bought them at basically Home Depot. They make great decoration on this wall. I don't see the purpose except maybe when I start doing my brake tests, since I don't care about these. And these, I don't know, I just rather buy highlining gear from highlining outfitters because that way I know it's like legit. I don't know if this steel is different than other steel. And anyways, I'm not fond of these. I don't really slackline with these, but they're nice to have for miscellaneous use. Okay, here are normal Quicklinks. These are 12 mil, which is just ridiculous. And then 8 mils, which are pretty common, normal. And if you're using an 8mm rope, the diameter of your rope should match the bend of your Quicklink. And so these, if you have a normal hanger on a bolt, this is ideally you should be using something like this. I tend to go with something smaller. You'll see that in a minute. These are all Malian, whatever. It's the French company. Balance Community sells these. You can buy them, I think, from other places. And so they're pretty nice. You know that we can use them for highlining. The working load limit, for whatever that's worth, is over 2,000 pounds. And no single point on your anchor ever sees that. So these are super bomber. This is something standard that you should use. Here's some steel carabiners. I have some really, really beefy ones, but I have them on my midline. The shape is like meh. This is what I used before I knew there were Quicklinks. They're DMM 45 kilonewtons. Now the nice thing about steel carabiners is they don't break, they bend. So they're gonna, when they fail, you're gonna go, oh shit, I gotta buy another one, rather than, you know, scream to your death. So steel's ideal when you're highlining. I tend to use a lot of soft shackles, but steel it's not good to use aluminum in like the high tension areas. I like this one. This is, the MBS on this is only 27 kilonewtons. But anyways, it's a Petzl. It's auto locking, which is nice because sometimes you forget to lock stuff. I like the shape. The more oval tends to be nice for some things I'm doing. Okay, these are Delta Quicklinks, the triangles. What I bought them originally for was to put them on a climbing hanger, and then you can put your span set in here and it lays nice and flat. If you are going to rig with span sets, these are pretty awesome. I think these are Malian as well. 45 kilonewtons, that's pretty good. Again, it's steel, it's heavy. 8 of these are a bitch, whatever. This is about 10 millimeter or 8 millimeter. This I know is an 8 millimeter. This is what I'm using. I bought it to connect 2 sew-in loops. Now I'm in the process of finding alternative solutions rather than having metal in your backup line going whoosh and, you know, possibly hitting you. But they do hold. You know, they are perfect for that. People have used them for that. Okay, these shackles, these are bow shackles. These are, I think, shackles. But anyways, some of these are for different parts of like a tension system, or like this would go to the Web Lock 2.0. So like there's purposes for all of these. They're kind of more or less irrelevant for us now. Maybe if you do long lining, you could still use stuff like this. It's maybe connect your pulleys rather than, well, I use soft shackles where I shouldn't. But these are all just little shackles that I have that we've collected over time. Okay, these are shackles that are more or less used. These are pretty common. I still use these when I want, you know, metal into the system rather than just soft shackles. Ideally, like you're using something like this with a sew-in loop or like a soft release. I'll show you what I have that's a little bit lighter now. But I actually have this in my midline. So I mean, if you're gonna have a permanent lineup, it's nice to have just some beefy metal there that can take the beating. And that little hole that is in the pin, I just put this nut there so this can't unscrew on me. Like, this is pretty bummer. I've actually had on Taft Point this nut fall off when we left it up overnight, and I mean, it's still held. You're not going to pull a pin out with lots of tension, because we used to rig with lots of tension when we did that line a lot. And but I came and there was like no nut, and it was like, felt pretty sketchy. It's like, where'd the nut go? It just vibrated all night and then came off. So that's where that little thing came from. This is because assholes exist. And so I don't go basically anywhere without this, at least in the car, depending on the hike. I think you can't even go to the freaking Lost Arrow Spire anymore without something like this. This is called the oh shit hangers. When people steal hangers, you have just enough of a wrench to put your 1/2 inch or your 3/8 inch nuts on, if they fucking stole the nuts. And as if stealing hangers is going to make your ecosystem better. So, way to problem solve, people. But anyways, it's nice to just have a bunch of fixie hangers, just spare. Ideally, you're supposed to use a 3/8 inch hole for a 3/8 inch bolt, but I'm not going to carry a bunch of different hangers for my oh shit hangers. But even if you go to Taft Point, you got to have something like this in the car. I know people have gone to the rostrum before, and people stole the hangers there, and they couldn't rig. I had to go home. Which is why we put glue-ins there. and that caused a little controversy, but there's still one anchor there that was super good enough that wasn't worth changing that still has hangers. So, and sometimes they get stolen. So I do recommend carrying a little oh shit kit for your Highlines. I will only tell you what this is for if you promise not to laugh. This was my idea of a hangover, a line slide, back in the day. And yes, I used to highline with this. So, since you promised not to laugh, I'll go into more detail about that. I needed a pulley that was 1 inch wide. They never made pulleys more than 1 inch wide that weren't huge, because this is called a knot passing pulley. Now, since we've evolved from this point, I now use it for my rope jumps or my hauling or things like that. It worked great when I put that board in there at the fruit bowl to pinch it down and then have the rope running over it, or hang it from a hang frame and then have the rope come up and over. So like, these are pretty awesome. Slacklife BC has a Kootenai Carriage, which is a bigger version of this, but this is originally what I bought it for, and I can't believe I used to highline with that on my harness. Here is the Pro Traction and the Micro Traction. Now, this is from my big walling days, but you can use this for hauling your line over when you're using a tag line. The Micro Traction will hold a 4mm rope. It actually kind of halfway holds a 3mm tag line. So these are great if you're pulling over like a pretty big line. Now, what the nice part about the Pro Traction, if you're not worried about weight, is with a carabiner in here, you can open it up and operate it. And so if you're hanging on the side of a cliff, this is pretty nice. But I mean, this is really, really light and really nice. You can use this as like attach your harness and do other tricks with it for like an ascender or an assistant. Self-rescue, it's great. A lot of good things. I don't know how clear that is for you, but this is super nice to have as soon as you start getting over even just 100-meter long highlines. Here is just a standard small SMC pulley, and I mean, this is great for self-rescue or redirects, or I think I have one, had one in my pulley system. In pulleys, I used to have this on my multiplier, but what I've learned was you want the biggest pulley on your multiplier and not on your main pulleys. Super interesting. But anyways, so this used to be on my pulley. I use this for a ton of stuff. Now, the other line slides 2.0, before hangovers really were a thing, was to drill out the pin, and then these two plates come apart, and then you buy skateball or roller skate bearings, and you take the 4 skateboard bearings, you put them in there, and you put a bolt with a locking nut on there, the nut with that plastic on the inside, so like it doesn't come undone, and you literally had to take it off, put it on, reconnect your carabiner, and then connect it to you. It was horrible, but I mean, it's better than the last pulley, right? So that's what a lot of these SMC pulleys have been used for. Here is a Petzl swivel. Now, I originally bought this for big walling because when you're hauling up a bag, you don't want the twist in your rope to get all kinked up. But now that we're into bigger lines, when you're hauling over the tag line, it also can have twists, and it's really nice. Once you get over, I'd say about 100 meters, it's really nice, more or less important, to have something like this between your webbing and your tag line, so it doesn't twist your webbing around, even though you hang something under it so it doesn't just keep turning and turning and turning. But this helps get rid of that twist. And it's 36, I think, MBS, 36 kilonewtons. It's amazing. We also use this in like the rope jump systems and stuff, depending on the haul part. This is really nice for a lot of things. They're not cheap, but if you're going to get into bigger stuff and you've already got the other gear you need, this would be a nice purchase to make. Here is my one random span set on this wall, because more span sets wouldn't fit. I have a box full of them in the garage. Now, one thing I like to do is I would write how many feet this is right on the span set all over the place, because you're always wondering if you got a 10, a 12, or a 6-footer. But this is folded in half, and this is what, I mean, I still long line with stuff like this, occasionally when I ever actually do go out, but, or wrapping. If you're wrapping, doing all natural rigging, span sets are great if you don't mind carrying them to where you're going. But I don't often use span sets anymore, so I just have this sitting there, makes it look pretty in the corner. And now my favorite part, soft shackles. I've got short ones and lots of long ones. I've got just a bunch. I probably have more than I actually use realistically. Some are from the wedding. But I usually make them in batches. That's really, really nice if you're going to make them. That way, I mean, nothing takes that long, but if you're already going to splice the eye, or tie the knot, and once you have it like fresh in your mind, why not tie 8 more? This is only like $5, $6, $7 to make like a 4-inch soft shackle, which would be this guy. I mean, they're like 30, 40, or $50 if you buy them done, but they're pretty nice when they're professionally made. But anyways, I think they're pretty durable. I've had like this one, for example. I've had this for 3 or 4 years. No, I don't have padding on these. This is the tail coming out when I buried the tail. That is not a fray. That is, I mean, that's the condition of the focal point. I mean, after years and years and years, it's just in really great shape. They fade. So, I mean, this red one's pretty new. It'll be pink in no time. And then eventually, I think, turn white. But, I mean, these are like 7,700 pounds. I'm going to, hopefully, I have a brake test set up that will break something this strong, because that'll be a lot of fun to see soft shackles break. And this is a 9mm, the Amsteel's 9mm soft shackle, 4-inch soft shackle. This thing I think breaks at 37,000 something pounds. Like, this is ridiculously strong. Now the problem with this is they do work in like Web Lock 4.0 now. Like, you can fit something this big in there. But originally when I had these bigger sizes, I had the 3.0, and it's just you can barely fit that in there, and you can't fit the buried side. So you'd have to go like this, and it felt too big for this eye. But I mean, with a 4.0, it's nice. And I mean, if you're going to do some hardcore stuff, it's nice to have a beefy one for a master point. But I mean, everything else in your system isn't going to be this strong, so this is a little overkill. But it was fun to make. And here's my continuous loops. No, I don't highline on that, but it is cute. It's pretty much for that. Now this is super nice when you have a master point that's just cluttered, and you need to attach your tension system to it because you don't want to be pulling off one bolt off to the side, which is really ironic when people tension off like a single bolt, because that's actually the time you're going to have a ton of force on it, and it's on one single point. But anyways, every single point should be strong. Anyways, so I slip this through the continuous loop through the master point, and then like there you have a clip-in point. That's kind of like above or below your web locks, whatever you want. Super nice to have these things. It's nice for a lot of things. You can double them up, fold them in half, and that makes it a bit stronger. Not quite double, but you know, these are pretty nice for a lot of different things. Extensions, statically, if you want to extend a bolt, if you got a bolt way over there and you kind of want to have this fairly equalized, and you can't have a bolt way back there because then that won't see much force. But I have a variety of length, a variety of sizes. This is 9mm. You can actually use this. You make sure you pad trees, especially if you're going to use something like this. And you can kind of use this as for like a, well, this would be more of a small tree. But these just continuous loops have lots of purpose. This is a Yates, depending on how you want to say that, screamer. This, I think, starts to come out at 2 kilonewtons, I believe, around 500 pounds-ish of force. It'll extend and it breaks the stitching. It's like an intentionally bad stitching job. so it'll like absorb the force if you're falling. Now, why would you want that? If you're going to take a whipper on your backup because your main failed and your backup is low stretch, plus there's no tension in it because it's a loose backup, it might hurt, especially if you fall 30 or more feet before you actually get caught. It's like taking a big fall on a static rope and climbing. That would be awful. So we did some tests in this. We have another video where we had one of these on both sides, and we dropped a really heavy bag onto an Amsteel backup line, which is like the lowest stretch backup you'd ever have. And the whipper the bag took was pretty mild. Actually, a little less mild than a normal whipper. So these are important to have. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell is this blue thing on here? Well, I'm glad you asked. I taped, so it's Amsteel. It's it's 2 fixed eyes, single piece of Amsteel. And my eyes, the one thing I actually pad, that never gets actually used, the carabiner or whatever I'm attaching goes in there. And this is attached to, let's say, the master point, and this would be the backup line, the web lock, whatever, sew-in loop on this side. And this is just Velcroed on here. I don't want to completely undo it. But this is just zigzagged in there. So when it extends, this is bigger than the screamer. Because if you're going to take a backup ride, the last thing you want to do is be on some screamer and only the screamer. So it's nice to have, this is just to make the screamer redundant. You don't want to have this too short or it stops this from screaming. And if you tie off your tails from your backup line to your master point or further back, you got to make sure you leave enough tail for it to scream. You got to account for a lot of these things when you embed a screamer into your Highline rig. These are Alpine Web Locks from Balance Community. Kim bought the Web Lock 2.0 and a prototype like 2.5.0 that Jerry had at the time. I actually don't know which is which. Web Locks came into my life at the 3.0. And that is why I have 8 of them. I have a couple on my midline, some on my rodeo line, a couple in here. I have a ridiculous amount. I used to rig Highlines with 4 web locks. Now I rig Highlines with sew-in loops and 1 web lock and a frost knot. But anyways, web lock 3.0s were great. The eye is nice for a soft shackle, like rounded edges, whereas these side plates, basically with a bolt going through the diverter, really you can't use soft shackles for that. Even I'm not going to, push my luck on that. But the pins are the same. I think one of these could be changed out for like a 2-inch webbing. And so you just have to change, I think, the center diverter and pin. Maybe that's why that pin is absolutely massive. I don't know. 3.0s are pretty nice. And but now I have a 4.0. And that is a huge eye. It's pretty light. I like how you can like clip some random shit to there, especially if you're just gonna like lower it back out. This, I think they're similar weight. This is just super nice single web lock. Probably one of the best single web locks out there. Now my new favorite kind of web lock is this all-in-one kind, where you have this pin that doesn't fall out. It doesn't have that annoying little string on the side. You can take out the web lock part of it and use it for like a soft release or use it to connect the sew-in loops or whatever. So you get more than just a single purpose out of it. And this thing's pretty bomber. You put that in there, the pin, once you hear the click, then it's not going to come out. This is well designed, well rated, and it's from Pure Slacklines. Here are some leash rings. I think this is an aluminum one from, I think maybe Land Cruising. I don't know, it was a little small, never really became fond of it. These are the medium-sized rings that you see that are pretty common. Electrical tape holds 2 rings together, redundancy. They're fairly heavy, so my leashes all have different kinds of rings on them. I'm steering more away from these, but these are pretty normal. There's nothing that wrong with them. But these are my spare leash rings. Here are some bomber soft shackles that Michael Melner made for me as a gift. I want to ask if I can break these because I'm curious how strong they are, and they're a lot easier to break than those. But no, they're pretty cool. Thank you, Michael Melner, for these. So here is a 5mm and a 6mm Quicklink. I bought the 5mm before I realized I could buy the 6mm. Jerry started carrying these. These are just a little bit too strong. Technically, these are from Camp. These are from Mammalian. And they're technically the same strength as a carabiner, which is not the only factor that should be taken into consideration. The bend radius is very small, and so when you run an 8mm static rope for like an anchor, you're actually losing quite a bit of the strength in your rope when you use something like this. I'm still here. They worked, but for very, very little additional weight. If you're going to have a climbing hanger, and you obviously can't run a rope through a normal climbing hanger, these are technically one option. They hold, I think, 650 kilograms is the working limit, or 30 kilonewtons is, I think the MBS. But these are actually what I use a lot, and I think you can still buy them on Balance Community. Here is a huge shackle sent from Hans Johnson in Austria. We hung out with him when we were in Europe, and he sent that as a gift to us, and it was pretty cool. These are accessory, like this spins, this is a diverter, and they go on the airbow from land cruising, which is an aluminum shackle, which is awesome, and there's just accessories to make that more functional. These are figure 8s, the metal kind. I've used them for climbing. In rope swings, they were useful for stuff. But, I mean, technically, if you could tape 2 of those together for redundancy, you could use that as a leash where you tie your leash there. Not very common, but I have them. And this we got for silks. Kim got into that a little bit. Really kind of hard to, we don't really have a setup for it. But these are pretty cool. Not cheap, but pretty cool. Here are some Rappel Rings. These are just rolled aluminum, cheapo, light aluminum Rappel Rings. I don't think I've ever bought these before. These are all off of anchors that I've cleaned off of climbs. These just seem so light, I just wasn't fond of rappelling on them. But these welded rings, I used them for line locks. Not too fond of them. The welds are fine. I don't have any sharp burrs or anything. But they're not, I mean, if you're going to use a line lock, this is like you would want to use a stainless steel ring like this and not just a rolled aluminum. But, I mean, we've moved on with sew-in loops and web locks, so these are no longer used. Here are some of my tapes I have. Obviously, this isn't going to tape very much, but I'm not going to put all my tapes on this wall. This is that new fiber tape that Jerry has made a bunch of videos about. Pretty strong stuff. You literally have to untape it if you're going to take it off a Highline out when it's rigged, if you ever needed to remove it, because you're not ripping it with your hands. Electric tape, climbing tape, duct tape has actually worked really well. I'm stoked to try more of this. Not entirely cheap, but like how many times do you have to tape your line, right? Not very much. Whereas climbing tape, it's always breaking. And you can see I have on my leash here, I actually Highline with it. So if I have to repair a spot, I mean, and you're 200 meters out, you don't want to, go back and get tape and come back and fix it. So you don't feel it when you're walking, and it's nice to have. The newest member of our family, my Dynamometer. This is a Rock Exotica Enforcer. I bought this from Balance Community. They're not cheap, but I mean, considering I get to make videos with it, and it's not just for me testing something that may more or less has already been tested. This has been an awesome purchase. Especially with rope jumping, I feel a lot better knowing what my forces are. But I'm going to stick this on every Highline I do now, just because it's not like that heavy. I mean, I'm not going to hike to the Lost Arrow Spire with it, but like most other lines. Especially when I get above 300 meters. I just don't really understand those forces yet, and this will be really nice. But you can buy these on Balance Community. This is my soft release. I cut off more or less half of this, which is I'm working on getting sew and loop done so I can make an additional one. But the point is, my Lynx web lock, the Lynx 4.0 is great. It has this pin in the back, which really sucks for everything else. But like for this setup, it's my preference. I've been actually able to use the pure lock as well with it now, but I have combined this shackle with instead of that one. But anyways, you can set it up for this. The point is, the way I've got this set up is this is the airboat from land cruising, and I love the big tall side plates there. It sits your 5 or 6 layers of soft release in there well. This carabiner is just me tying off my tails. I tied it off 3 or 4 times in this case. This is a soft release from Bounce Community, and so it has that Velcro built into it. And then I just take this and, but I have to undo this to put this in, but it's pre-built, but I can put that into my master point and then put it back together pretty easily. Sometimes the dyno is on this side, and then I have to take this off and slip that on. I actually don't think this fits on this dyno eye. So high side plates aren't always good. Anyways, I like to have my soft releases pre-set up, and I have this on almost every Highline now, and I put them on the static side because instead of the tension side giving you slack and then you unhook everything and send it all back, you more or less just soft release it, attach it to the tagline, send it back to the dynamic side. So yeah, now this is in everything I ever do. This is my laser measure. I went for price when I bought this. This is a good one. Like I can measure, I think I've measured 700 meters with this before. But I definitely should have purchased something that could measure level. Like it's a real problem. Sometimes I try to like tape this to a level and laser from there, and I'm eventually going to break down and buy a level built in to these. But you kind of want it to be able to measure up to a mile because that's where things are going these days. But you just like hold it down, and the longer it is, you got to hold it down longer. Sometimes I didn't think it actually measured very far, but it does. You just kind of have to hold it there. But yeah, it's pretty nice for measuring the length of Highlines, or like potentially if you're scouting for stuff, what to take up there. So these laser levels are great. They're they're common for golfers to use, so they're like all in yards, but I'm sure you can buy kinds that convert different lengths and measurements. I mean, this is pretty cheap. This was under $100. If you spend like $200 or $300, you can get something pretty nice. Glove Central. So this should be in the climbing section, but hand jammies. I get made fun of these, or I get made fun of for these sometimes, but what's the difference between this and tape? These are easier to take on and off. And I am a pussy, so I do wear gloves when I highline, and I really like motorcycle gloves, just fingerless motorcycle gloves. They're soft, so they're not like big wall gloves. I used to have these big wall gloves when I was highlining, and that's stiff. Now, these Metolius kind with the fabric in the back is way better than like all deer leather, but they take like 30 minutes for your hands to like get them loose again. Otherwise, they're just super, super stiff. So soft motorcycle gloves is all you need, fingerless. Unless it's super cold, I guess you could go full glove. But half glove is great for highlining. These are my 6mm and my 5mm Whoopie Slings. I have gone down a size because I don't feel like I need a 7,700 pound Whoopie Sling. Now, I do still recommend these because I haven't really tested these yet. But anyways, I have a whole video on how to make Whoopie Slings, but 12.5 feet of AM steel. By the time you make your Brummel eye splice there, you bury it, which in theory it should be longer bury than this, but these always hold. And then I kind of bury the tail inside of itself so it's like a fat snake at the bottom. That way it doesn't come out if you accidentally pull. And I get a little over I get about 6 feet out of this. And so I use these to make my anchors redundant to prevent them from extending out because, at least I used to, I would make sliding X's with this. So if one bolt were to break, it's going to extend quickly and Whoopie Slings back that whole system up. And now I needed more anyways, so I only had 8 of these, and I like to have at least enough for a setup for 2 Highline rigs. So I just made it out of a little bit smaller. So if you have smaller Whoopies, let me know what you think. If you don't have smaller Whoopies for a good reason, let me know what you think. Dun dun dun. The tension system. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. Basically, I don't take this highlining anymore unless it's really, really big. But Kim had these Rock Exotica pulleys. I think these are 2 inches. I have the SMC 3-inch pulleys, but I just use them for something at work now. I don't find them, they don't need, this isn't that important. I find a big pulley on the multiplier has done wonders for getting a lot of tension. And I even take this long lining, I take this high line, it's I use it for everything. The pulley I wish I had, but I never wanted to bite the bullet and buy a whole nother pulley setup. Felt like I was chasing technology, right? And I'm glad I waited because now we just stopped using them. And all we now use is the line grip. But, so there's really no point in me buying that Highline super, super light setup. I use the Kroll. This is nice for if you're ascending, you can get this little harness that goes on and stuff, whatever. But I like to use that, attach it to this, and use that as my multiplier. There's tib locks. I have those on the wall. There's all sorts of things you can use. You can just freaking use an ascender. But it's really nice having this 3-inch SMC pulley for the multiplier. But anyways, this is a Grigri 2.0. This is a Grigri 1.0 and a Grigri 3.0. It was, I like having the Grigri on there. Oh, this string, so nice. You just kind of drill a hole through the plastic handle there. And when everything's super tight and you can't bend that through, you just take that little string and then you can slowly and controllably lever it out. That's my little trick for this. These pulleys are not soft shackle approved because they have just plates with they're not knife sharp edges, but they are more or less sharp edges. I have used these soft shackles on these pulleys for a substantial amount of time, and I'm doing just fine. Plus, I'm not actually highlining on them when the tension system's in, so I don't freaking care. I have an 8mm rope that I use, and I just pat it right there at the contact point. And I don't use these enough to have wear and tear. This twist shackle is awesome to keep your brake, which is what the Grigri is, cockeyed sideways. And that way it's all embedded. I don't have this additional brake system. I don't have a rigging. I do have a rigging plate on my midline because I had no other purpose for it. But anyways, I lost my line grip at Moab during the wedding. So if you have a line grip you don't own, call me. But anyways, so I ended up buying this, the newest line grip, the G2 SBR, whatever. It has the balls, that stopper balls, so it doesn't fall off, which is really, really nice. This is a really cool line grip. Happy I bought it. Wish I didn't have to, but I've got it, so that's cool. These are my hangovers. I have taken a quick draw, the sling in between them, and I clip this to my main loop, and I clip this off to my side loops. And that way when I need it, I just take it off of one part and connect it, and that way if I ever were to drop it, it's always connected to me at all times. I think especially kind of important at an urban highline festival where Like, I've heard people actually drop these on people. It's bad enough to drop a hangover and then not have it and have to buy another one. It's another thing to drop it on people. But anyways, room for improvement on these, but they are the much better than that thing I had over there. But I do like this sling. That is what this one is for. But during the wedding, I lost the hangover without the lock, the one I actually like. I'm not really fond of the locks, and this worked on that one. But anyways, these are my hangers. Here are my leashes. Your typical leash you can buy now. This is a Zurge ring. I like the idea of the rope going around the Highline. You only need one ring. These plates are a little like aggressive up on top. The string is fine. Everybody makes fun of the string. The string holds this in place. It doesn't have to hold much, you know. I think it would stay on without the string. Anyways, it's nifty. It's nice, but it's super, super light. It's not that big. It has a hard time going over like two sew and loops connected. Regardless of how you connect it, this is the inside diameter is pretty small. And then I have, this is not a medium-sized ring. It's slightly bigger, but you can see here it's titanium rings. These are more or less half the weight of the standard medium-sized rings, but the price, I think they're $80 each. So if you got money to burn, go for it. And then this is the Super Duper ring. I actually bought this from just some random ass site back in the day when I bought rings. Now, I don't like the fact it's not redundant. Very few people who buy Super Bomber rings, they don't take more than one. And I'd rather have like redundancy than like Super Bomber. But the big eye is great if you're trying to cross over two sew and loops connected, which is obviously my thing right now. How often do you do that? Probably not too often. So medium size is pretty much all you'll ever need. Here are my 8mm 30 and 35 foot anchor ropes. These are canyoneering ropes. I had a hard time finding canyoneering rope, which is like rated, instead of like a normal 8mm static rope, is like rated for 3,000-ish pounds of force. Sorry, I'm not doing kilonewtons. But these are rated for like 5,000. I don't think it really freaking matters, especially with the sag swag now. But the abrasion resistance is really good, and I think that has value. So canyoneering rope, if you can, 8mm, I'd probably go 7 now if I had to buy more. But 8mm is pretty common. And I've got, I also lost one during the wedding. I'm surprised how little I didn't lose. I left my shit laying around, all right? But I have 5 of these. I kind of had 6. And a bunch of these lengths are great when you're rigging all natural and you're wrapping stuff, because you can wrap like a single thing or 2 things with a length like this, and you put a bunch of that together, and then you have to connect it with another one. But I almost feel like I should have a couple more of those. Those are invaluable. This is my big wall hammer, generally used to smash pitons, or this carabiner works awesome in there because it's not very fat, to pull out pitons. But in Yosemite, you can't use a drill, so we have this rock peck, and you put the SDS drill bits in there like you'd put in the hammer drills, those drills. Yep, that's the noise they make. And you go pop, spin it, pop. It takes about 1,000 hits to drill a bolt. This has been well used, but it's in the bolting area because that's what I use it for. This is a torque wrench, which is kind of a bitch to carry, but like if you're not going to carry this, it's nice to practice what kind of torque you have at home and maybe a practice bolt, so you know what it feels like, and then use your normal size wrench that you're going to take just so you know how much torque you're putting on a bolt, because they have a specific torque they're supposed to have. It's not just as hard as you can pull. So these are pretty cheap. Just get one on Amazon. Simpson Strong Tie Set XP. Now that I've done my homework, go to the bolting Bible on slackademics.com. There's better glues than this. This has sensitive curing temperatures and takes like a full day to dry. And if it's cold out at all, it takes 3 days to dry if it dries at all. Not my favorite, but I still have a tube, and I might use this for some brake tests that I'm going to do. And here are my bolts. Last but not least on this wall. These hangers I like to put with my, I'll start with the bolt. Fixie Triplex removable. There's 3 parts to this bolt. This is a single rod, nut, the wedge. You suck the rod up, this thing sticks higher and higher and higher, fans this out, and it's removable. They can be a bitch to remove. A 13 millimeter hole, or 12.8 or 12.7, a half-inch hole, this does not work. This is a 12 millimeter bolt. A 12.000 millimeter hole, this doesn't really work. It's got this really sweet spot. If you can nail it, this is great. It goes in good, comes out good, but usually you got to work them to get them out. But I mean, technically, so this is a half-inch-ish, so you can use half-inch hangers. Fixie has a nice half-inch, a 30 kilonewton hanger, a really strong hanger. But what I like to use these for is the M12s from land cruising. Now, if you're going to use a removable bolt, you're probably not leaving it in there. But this weld is fine unless you have stress, crack, corrosion as a factor, like near an ocean or limestone, depending on your rock. It can basically fail really quickly at the weld point. But if you don't have that problem, they're super great. What I like about these is you can run your rope directly through them. They don't have a sharp hanger, whereas something like this, you need a Quicklink, at least the 6 millimeter or the 8 millimeter we talked about. Rarely do I bolt something and leave bolts in, if I bolt anything at all these days, so I often rig with these because I don't leave bolts just laying around. If I am going to bolt, I'm going to make it last a long time, and I'm going to use, I'm not going to use these anymore. These are fine. These are at the rostrum, and you put the glue in right up to there, and they're super nice. You just can't, highline that way with them. You really have to know which direction you're going, and you can't use them for multiple lines. One of the downsides for gluing, but one of the downsides I see for these guys, whoops, is people stealing hangers. These would suck to have stolen. But these are good glue-ins. Then you have, these are no longer made, I believe, Climbtech. This is all built as one. This is only a 25 kilonewton hanger, and I would love to replace it with the one I just dropped. But really, this doesn't come apart. This has a cone at the bottom, flares out the wedges, and these are all mechanical bolts, blah, blah, blah. So these are the bolts I have up there. I have other kinds. I'm going to be buying future ones. Go to the Bolting Bible on slackademics.com, and you'll see a whole slew of a buying guide that I did there. But these are what I have. This is what you see on the wall. And to conclude the tour of my wall, I have here some Lion from Slacklife BC, which is their high-tech webbing. Awesome stuff. And Sky Pilot, which is a super popular, super awesome webbing. Go to slacklifebc.com and buy yours today. That's what I have hanging on the wall. They're about 100 meters each. Now, I know this was a long video. Thank you if you're watching to this point. Thank you very much for being engaged. And if you really like this, it's important that you give me some feedback on what you want to see on the next videos, if you even want these long-ass videos. And if you have questions, I can do a follow-up video to this, and you can either correct me on things I said wrong, which, language isn't my specialty, so I probably misspoken. And so if I did, or if you have pointers, I'll do a follow-up video, I'll answer questions, I'll correct what I've said, and we can go in further detail into some of this stuff, but trust me, it won't be 45 minutes long. It's my climbing stuff. We'll do that in a separate video. But please leave a comment, a feedback. Send me private messages. I engage with everyone who engages with me. So thank you for watching. And as you can see, highlining can be very expensive. Therefore, you shouldn't highline. Hey, thanks for watching, but don't be an idiot and go rig your first Highline without going with somebody who knows what they're doing. A great way to get introduced to the sport is to go to a Highline festival. But until you get that opportunity to be taught in person how to Highline, you can watch my other videos so you know what you're looking at when you do actually get that opportunity. Don't forget to comment on the videos and don't forget to subscribe.